Right. Matt, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast there. How are you doing?
Doing great, Adam. Great to be here.
No, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have you on the show, and I've been looking forward to this one. So what I'm going to do is, I'll introduce you and just go into a little bit about, what you do. So you are the co-founder and CEO of MEND, and you sent me some show notes here, and I'll just read them out, and then you can kind of break them down. So, MEND is an enterprise patient engagement platform that offers easy patient intake and communications, custom in-office and virtual care workflows, and seamless telehealth optimized with AI. So, do you mind kind of breaking down what MEND is and how you kind of got into this kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, much of healthcare in the United States, before I founded the business, was really lagging behind other industries. There's so many things where you can just push a button and food shows up, cars show up, groceries show up, dog walkers show up, right? I mean, just about anything these days is really just a click away. But that's not the case for healthcare. And so what we did is we built a platform that really digitizes a lot of these different touch points with patients that could happen before, during, or after an appointment. So if you think of things like a patient being able to book their own appointment, make changes, do their forms digitally, make payments, get reminders about the appointment, to the actual visit itself, and doing that over telehealth, just like we're talking through video conferencing right now. And then maybe any follow-ups after a visit. Maybe we want to get a survey filled out, or there's a remaining balance to be paid, or additional appointments to be scheduled. And so we really help create those modern experiences for larger healthcare organizations in the US.
No, it's really good. And I think there's definitely, a niche there, isn't there, really, in the market? And I think with healthcare, I know that, American, UK quite similar, and, but there are, I think, some differences, in the healthcare. But like what you said, there's that seamlessness with technology and that being able to book in and get what you need done, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what healthcare is still, calling to make an appointment, but nobody answers the phone when you're trying to call on your lunch break, or they're closed, or they're handing clipboards with paper to fill out, and then somebody's got to transcribe and type that into another system. There's just lots of these different inefficiencies that are very manual and labor intensive. And we really help, I think, empower the patient to perform some of this work and automate some of this work on behalf of healthcare organizations. And this where every other industry is, right? So healthcare has got to catch up, and it will catch up.
Yeah, definitely. Like when you started launching this and putting it out there, did you find that difficult? Like, how was it, trying to pitch it to businesses, hospitals, or healthcare departments? Like, is there anything around that?
Yeah, I think it's always difficult to start a company from from scratch. So I think that's why a high percentage of them fail. But what we decided to do is we launched initially focusing on telemedicine and in offering telemedicine. And then we had the other functionality as part of that, because if the patient is at home, they have to do forms at home, they have to make payments at home, they have to do everything remotely. So we have to solve all the workflows, not just the video portion of it. So we started with telemedicine, and one of the MEND is the second company that I've founded that's achieved a certain scale of success. And I think one of the ways to kind of really get going and maybe test things out is just tapping into digital marketing. Being able to, within 15 minutes on Google, appear at the top of different search results, understand if there's an existing market that you can tap into. And so that worked pretty well in the beginning. I think that allowed us to find a lot of early adopters and organizations that were interested in being pioneers in telemedicine in the US. And from there, we really felt like, all right, well, this needs to be a comprehensive platform. It's got to work for in-person visits too. So we always built the product to be, one platform that a healthcare organization would, for no matter what their appointments are.
And like by the sounds of it, everything's kind of built into one platform, so people can kind of schedule appointments, they can speak to doctors, they can, get prescriptions maybe. Like all these things are kind of all interlinked into this one, into MEND basically, into the platform.
Yeah, and I think a lot of organizations bought these one-off solutions, and then you have to integrate them into back office systems. So there's all these different integrations you have to maintain, all these different vendors you have to work with, and it doesn't create a really comprehensive experience. So in building a single platform that can really solve all the touch points, it's one vendor in MEND, it's one integration to maintain. You can really have one consistent experience for patients to interact and engage with. And then I think a lot of groups can save money. If you're buying everything individually, it's a lot more expensive. If you have to maintain 10 integrations versus one, it's a lot more expensive. So I think there's a lot of organizations looking to consolidate and create one cohesive experience too.
Yeah, most definitely. And like, where can people like purchase? Like, do you have to be in America, or whereabouts can you get this platform anywhere? Like, what you offer.
I mean, we have some international customers, but mostly our customers are in the United States, and it's just mend.com, MEND.com, and pretty simple.
But I think like this, what you're doing, I think there's probably, a possibility for it to probably branch out, in the future, isn't there? Or at some point, because I think I see, the current role that I work in, I was talking about before we started the podcast. I talk to a lot of people who try and get in touch with their doctor over here in the UK. And I think when we first met, I was talking about, some of the issues and logistic problems over here in the UK with people trying to get in touch with their doctor. They can't get an appointment. There's a crazy waiting list for the NHS. If you can't, people who can't afford private healthcare have to be in a waiting list, or they're chosen on how severe their case is, and then moved to like the top. And I think, I heard the other day that here in the UK, some doctors are working like 1 day a week in the surgery, and then the other days they're working from home doing like phone appointments some places. So I mean, you think about like the logistics and how great your platform is, and how it could benefit other people and things like that, because people want that seamless experience, don't they, to get what they need done, especially in healthcare or talking to a doctor.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunity for virtual, because the visits are usually faster. Providers can oftentimes, be accessing records and doing their charting while they're in the middle of the session. You just have the video up on one part of your screen and you can be doing everything else. So if you look at, I think, what you're referring to is a problem that is facing a lot of countries, which is a shortage of providers. And I think because of the pandemic, that's really put, it's made a lot of providers look at early retirement. So I think there's staffing issues all over the globe when it comes to healthcare. And I do think that telemedicine specifically can solve a lot of those issues because the visits are faster. It gives providers the ability to do some remote work. You can maybe tap into more part-time providers or tap into providers in a much larger geographic area, and providers can see patients in a much larger geographic area. And from some of the studies that I've seen in the US, I think a lot of what you're talking about relates to health quality, right? The people that can afford the care are receiving the care, and there's been a lot of studies, and I think a lot of data that's proven that telehealth can really help move the needle in terms of health quality. So I think there's a lot of potential benefits that will be realized from healthcare moving to more digital, more telemedicine, phone types of visits instead of trying to do everything in person all the time.
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, some people have to go in like these caller queues and they're on the phone for like 40 minutes or if not longer to just talk to somebody. And it's like if you've got this seamless experience where you can just check in and book an appointment and Zoom the doctor that you and talk to them about what's going on. And then they can say, okay, well, pick up your prescription or whatever, it's done. It's a lot more easier, isn't it? It's a no-brainer, really. So I think it's a really great platform what you've created. And like how did you kind of get into this? Like, is this something that was an idea for some time or was you doing other things?
Yeah, I did have a healthcare background. I had worked in a healthcare startup that wasn't successful, so learned a lot there. And then I worked for a large publicly traded company in the U.S. in the healthcare space. But I actually built an ed tech company and exited that. And some friends of mine had just exited a healthcare company they had helped build. And so we were able to put together the initial funding to create MEND, in which we had always kind of wanted to work together. And we all had healthcare backgrounds. We knew that healthcare was going to be going in this direction. Every other vertical was moving to text message and websites and moving to these virtual, frictionless, more convenient experiences. And so we felt like there was an opportunity to be a part of the solution in healthcare, and instead of being part of the problem, and really trying to focus on increasing access for patients and helping healthcare organizations solve some of these big problems they have, like no-shows and staffing issues and other sorts of problems. And so really we wanted to try to make a difference. And I think healthcare is one of those areas where even if it's a small company, you're making a difference, you're helping patients. And because we're all patients, right? Even doctors are going to be patients. So yeah, that's a little bit of the backstory for you.
No, it's awesome. And I think like, it's very true what you said. And I think it's great, that you've created this platform. And I think, like you said, if you work for companies or you are in something and it fails, I think there's a lot of lessons, in life lessons to take from that, isn't there? And there's a lot of learning we can take from failure. And if things don't work out, sometimes that can be a good thing. We can grow from that and take that experience to, something else. And you learn from other places and their mistakes, and then you kind of build on that.
Yeah, I mean, failure is just an opportunity to learn. It's just another opportunity. And if you're gonna start a business, you need to learn that. And I think maybe a lot of people struggle with that, which is maybe why a lot of businesses fail. That's maybe why the failure rates are so high. But yeah, there's this concept of fail fast. It's going to happen. You're going to definitely make some mistakes, and it's just not something to get caught up in. It's an opportunity to learn.
No, I love that. I love that. I love what you said about failure, and that it's an opportunity to learn, because it really is an opportunity to learn, isn't it? And there's a lot that we can learn about ourselves, a lot that we can take from that, and it makes you probably look at yourself and look at the situation, and where to improve. And I think a lot of people fear failure, and it's not something that is taught to us in school that is okay. I think you're told to get these grades and do this and do that, and then your parents might be saying do this, do that. So people are constantly a bit thinking about failure, but like you said, you take a lot to learn from it and growth from that, which
Yeah.
I really think is true.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's one of those things like you have to be okay with, right?
Mm.
Because if it's kind of like criticism, failures, all of these negative things, like you have to be good at processing any negativity and trying to find the opportunities in those situations. It's not really anything. It's just something you have to sort of figure out. And you're right. It's not really it's not really taught that way. You have to kind of figure that out.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely, definitely. And like yeah, I also seen some like questions, so I'll kind of like ask some of these core questions. I was just wondering, like, do you have any favorite books at all? Any favorite books that you like, that favorite of yours?
Yeah, I mean, I probably read a book a week. Maybe if it's a longer book, maybe it takes 2 weeks, but so it's kind of tough to narrow down one. But if I had to pick one, I think what I kind of tend to recommend, I guess, would be Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. So I don't know if that one's come up on your podcast or if you've read that one, but that's probably the definitely a book I tend to recommend.
Yeah, no, I think it was like one of the first kind of businessy kind of books or personal development books I ever read, and I think it's one of those classics, isn't it? It's one of my favorites, I think, as well. And it's such an old book, isn't it? But it's very kind of relatable and true to today and how things work.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of good business lessons, life lessons, but there's also there's this component of law of attraction in the book too. It's also it's the idea that thoughts are things, and so it's not just a book of well, here's some things that we've observed that successful people do. It's almost like, well, yeah, but there's this thing, doesn't call consciousness, but I think in so many words it really tries to uh dial into the law of attraction, which I think is interesting about that book.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. And I think it touches base on law of attraction, doesn't it? And how where our thoughts become things, and emotions and behaviors, and that everything is like energy, isn't it? And when you break it down, it kind of makes sense, because if you think of someone's identity and how they think about themselves, if they're thinking a certain way, they're going to attract that emotion on it, that energy. Whereas if people are more aligned with the opposite, and they think positive and believe in something, then they're more likely to attract that thing on it. Really will have better chance.
Absolutely. And if anybody can find one thing at all that didn't originate with a thought, anything in the room, anything in the universe, if they want to put it in the comments, I would love to know what that thing is, because there isn't anything that I could point to that didn't originate with a thought. And so yeah, that's one of the reasons why I like that book. And I think, people get maybe nervous about negative thoughts and worried about negative thoughts. I don't think you have to worry too much about that. I think the more you can just try to focus on thinking positively, it's going to produce outcomes for you, whether it's just attracting better things into your life, better mental health, whatever the case may be. There's really no downside to thinking positively.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. And they're doing lots of scientific research on, how the brain works, aren't they? And energy and thoughts and, like, like you look at, is it plants? I did like an experiment and you saw with plants and they had like negative words being said to plants. And I think the ones that had the positive words being said to them grew better. So there's like, energy that carries in what people say and think, but that's another podcast. But but no, it's true though, and I think it's really important that people read that book. And I thought just came to my mind now. Do you find like in business, working with people and managing people, why it's important to be a good leader and role model? If that makes sense, and how to manage people effectively.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I'm, an expert in that. I guess the
Any advice
uh,
you have in that?
yeah, I mean, I think that maybe a good place to start would be, um, people want to be valued, and I think that's really important to them. And I think that there's lots of different studies that have said that might even be more important than compensation to a lot of people. So I think that's important. Culture is important, but also, just being example. And I think whether that's in a leadership position, whether that's in a company or maybe that's outside of work as well. Um, I think just trying to be an example, not trying to force things on people. And we kind of talked about failures and things. I think how you react, how leaders react when failures happen, probably has a lot to say in an organization. I remember we had a case study in school, and Intuit, which is a big software company in the United States. They make a lot of tax software and so on and so forth. They had a big product launch that was a big failure for the company. And I'm sure they made massive investments and everything like that. And they got together and threw a party. They threw a big party, get everybody together. Let's understand why this didn't work. Where did we go wrong? And how do we solve this going forward? And so, how you sort of perceive maybe the failures, the mistakes, the things, how you react to those can probably really set the tone in an organization.
No, definitely. I think that's a really good point, and I appreciate you sharing that story. And I think like what you said as well, how leaders and companies react to things happening. And you mentioned like, feeling valued. I think that's a big thing. I remember working in some jobs in the past and you're working really hard and you just want the manager to say, good job. That can be the difference, make a massive difference. It might be the difference between you coming in the next day or not, or something like that, depending on the situation. And the thing, we want to feel valued for what we do. I don't know if it's instinctive in people, but I think it makes a massive difference, for your work, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think people want some feedback too. I think it doesn't all have to be, I think if there is something that needs to be corrected, it doesn't have to be a big deal. It doesn't have to be, announced publicly in front of everybody, or, maybe it's just direct with that person, just saying, hey, this is how we prefer it. So it's not like you can't ever address a mistake, but I think how you approach that as well can be a little different, and sort of avoiding public forums where you can. But yeah, I think that's a big thing for people, and they want to know if I'm working hard. Am I am I doing the job right? Too, am I doing a good job? Maybe I want to advance and have growth opportunities, so I want to make sure. And so it's almost that feedback loop a little bit too, that people are looking for when in terms of feeling valued.
Yeah, definitely. It's that recognition people want, isn't it? If they're putting a lot into something, to be recognized. And like you said, if people make a mistake or do something, you don't want to be kind of publicly kind of like put out there to say, oh, this person did X, Y, Z, because that could be probably productive. I think some people might manage that way, but I don't agree. I don't agree with that way of, if I was in that position. But I ask you another question as well. Like, what if you could say sit around a table with three people? Who would they be, and like why? Whether they're alive or not.
Yeah, so we had kind of discussed this a little bit before the show here, and this was a tough one, I think, because there were so many interesting people. But I would definitely say the first person I put around the table is God. So I don't know, is that a common one that comes up when you ask this question?
I think I've had some people say Jesus or God before. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to know. There's questions I have, I want to go right to the source,
Mm,
and understand more about the nature of the universe and consciousness and all these different things. So that would definitely be seat number one.
mm. That's a good choice.
Um, Seat number two, I think David Goggins. Do you know who Goggins is?
Yeah, yeah. He's the ex-US Navy SEAL, isn't he? Where it's like, I don't know. I just keep running. I just keep going.
Yeah, I think he the mental fortitude that he has is definitely worth a conversation. He's just a very interesting person, and he has a great book too, which is almost the book I would have recommended. And then last person, I think Andrew Carnegie, because he's the reason why Think and Grow Rich was written. So, and to understand more about, well, what did he learn about law of attraction? Why did he kind of talk about that with Napoleon Hill and send him on this path? Like, is there something more that he knew? That'd be fun to talk about.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Like, I think David Goggins would be really good to have on to talk about stuff and how he thinks and deals with things. And then I think like Andrew Carnegie would be quite good as well. He his boss, Napoleon Hill's boss or business associate? I can't remember. He
Well,
was like his mentor, wasn't
yeah, Andrew Carnegie commissioned Napoleon Hill, so I think kind of helped fund. I think they, there must have been some communication about maybe the law of attraction or something along those lines, and then kind of got him access and commissioned him to study other successful people and leaders, and probably funded that initiative as well. So, where did that all come from? Where did that all originate from? I think those would be interesting questions to ask Carnegie.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I completely agree. I think, there's some deep, important questions to be asked there. And also, like, who'd you say like your role models are? If you have any role models, if you could pick any.
Yeah, I think this is another one that's sort of hard to narrow down because there's so many interesting people out there. I mean, I think there's so many different people that you could potentially learn from. And so I just kind of picked one for sports and one for business. I think, Michael Jordan for, I was born in the 80s, in 1980. If you were born in that time frame, I think, Michael Jordan, you were into sports at all, I think that was definitely somebody you looked up to a little bit. And then from a business perspective, I mean, Elon Musk. I mean, this guy is going to go down as probably the greatest entrepreneur of all time. The businesses that he's building now are all to help humanity. They have these, sort of incredible mission statements or purpose behind them. So, yeah, those are two that I would identify.
No, I think they're really good choices, and I think like Michael Jordan, probably one of the greatest basketball players, at the time, wasn't it, or all time even. And Elon Musk and the work that he's doing, he's got like the Boring Company, like Tesla, SpaceX, that Neuralink. That's a bit sketchy, but see what happens. But yeah, he's quite a funny guy as well. I mean, I know he's quite controversial with some things, but I think he cares, doesn't he, really, about where everything's going. And he, a Starlink, another one, Starlink. The satellites. He even helped, like, the situation in Ukraine. He provided them internet, sent them like generators and whatever else. So I mean, he's definitely onto something. He's a bit like Bruce Wayne from
Yeah, or Tony Stark, maybe.
or Tony Stark. Yeah, Tony Stark. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and his products are great. I had a Tesla for a period of time. I mean, it was incredible. They just reimagined a car from the ground up, and now every automaker is trying to create electric vehicles. And yeah, it's crazy just the amount of I mean, just starting one small company can be difficult enough. And how many companies does he have that he's trying to change the world with, or the solar system with? I mean, it's incredible for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's definitely like innovative, isn't it? Like, what he's doing, and he's creating jobs for people, and all the rest of it as well. So it's all good all around. And also another question, like what advice would you have, for people who want to succeed in life or trying to like figure it out?
Yeah, it's a big question,
If you
right?
can.
And yeah, what maybe define success. What do you think your audience is most interested in? Is it business success, just life success? What do you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say you could touch on, like, like life success, really, like, or what you kind of picture for yourself, or any examples.
Yeah, I think uh a lot of times I like to think about it as, what would you do for free? At least, what I try and encourage the people around me and people that I know, what do you what would you do for free? Can you make that be part of your life. And maybe that is related to a business. Maybe it's just being a parent, taking care of other people, or something along those lines. I think there's a lot of applications for that. Or what are you really passionate about? Like Adam, I know you're passionate about podcasting and what you're building here. And so I'm sure you get a lot of fulfillment out of that. And or just even, where do you have expertise? I had a friend of mine who owns a barber shop, and he was always trying to throw out different ideas of different things. But in Think and Grow Rich, it talks quite a bit about, where you sort of have expertise is probably where you're going to be the most successful. And I told him, I said, you really need to do something in the barber industry, in the hair cutting field, because that's what that's what you've been doing for, however many years. And an opportunity came along for him to buy the shop. And he was able to navigate that with some help from his customers. And so far it's worked out really well. Now he's got two barber shops. So I think what would you do for free? What are you passionate about, or where do you have a lot of expertise? I think those are generally places where you're going to probably find success.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love, what you said about those things. And I think it's true, like finding something that, you have an expertise in, something that you have an interest, passion, you do it for free. And that ultimately is like, like fuel, isn't it, really? And you delivering in that area. And I think, also, in your life, like being a parent, being a parent, having a family, having kids, is also something that is very rewarding and, something that's fulfilling, and I think it's something that, you know, we aspire to do. I think some people might not want kids and that's fine, that's okay. But I think, if you do, then, that's something that, you can work towards, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it just comes down to, I know my wife really wanted to be a mom, right? That was one of her, I think, main goals in life, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. And we have two awesome kids. So I think you just don't want to get caught up in, well, this is how everybody does it, or I can't do this thing because of whatever, right? At least allow, figure out whatever it is that you're really passionate about. And how can you incorporate that more into your life in some way, and just be open-minded about that, or put it out into the universe and see what kind of happens. But yeah, just don't let the well, I can't, or I have to do this because I have to work in this crappy job because I have a family and I have to support them and all this. There's always opportunity out there.
No, I love that. And there's always opportunity out there. And I think it's true what you said. People sometimes might say, I can't do it. They think they can't do it. And people, we get held back based on our belief and the way we think. And that prevents us from then taking action and finding things out, and then just kind of dominoes. But like you said, if you just try things out and get out there in the world, you can create, and find something that you enjoy, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if maybe people really enjoy vacations, right? And well, I can't vacation for the rest of my life. But I mean, there's lots of people that are travel guides or tour guides, or they work in the hospitality industry and destinations, and or there's people who have blogs or podcasts that go around and vacation in all these places, and or do documentaries or what have you. So I mean, there's a lot of possibilities out there if you don't uh, allow yourself, or maybe other people are telling you can't do something. There's always opportunities, and then there's probably, luckily we have the internet, and you could probably go out there and find somebody that has done it successfully, and probably even did a podcast or a blog and will tell you how to do it successfully. So
Yeah.
a lot of opportunity, a lot of information out there.
Yeah. No, most definitely. I think that's, really important, and just being open to it, isn't it? And just trying things out. No, definitely. No, I really appreciate, what you said about that. And, to like kind of like round up as well, what have you learned about, yourself in, starting this business, or just kind of, businesses really? Like what have you learned along the way? Any struggles or, lessons?
Um, I mean, I think there's, probably tons of different things that you learn. Um, uh, I'm trying to think of something that would be relevant to the audience. I know that definitely, if you're going to start a business, if that's your priority, that's your goal. I think the one thing is, I wanted to build something big. You don't have to. I think a lot of people feel like that's what you have to do. Um, that was kind of my goal, and I wanted to do something at scale that could help a lot of people and sort of challenge myself with that. But if you're particularly, if you're trying to figure out what that passion is, you're starting that company or whatever, a lot of it just comes down to not quitting. I think, a lot of the questions have sort of touched on maybe success a little bit. And I think, we've talked about failures, right? Well, what are the failures? I think failures sometimes create these opportunities for people to quit, right? And so I think that's probably one of the most important things. If you just stay after it and just continue to find a path forward, even if you have to pivot, eventually, you will get there, because there's all kinds of different situations. I think, the founder of Pandora, ran out of money at one point, for years, but still had some people that were willing to work for free, and just kind of continued to move the ball down the field. And then, one day it becomes this big, publicly traded company. So I think no matter what the obstacle is, somebody's faced it, figured out some way forward, and eventually, they reach the destination.
No, I love that. I think it's really, really true what you just mentioned. And I think it's, that perseverance, that consistency and not quitting, and just that having that vision and a way forward, isn't it? And pushing on with that. And like you said before, sometimes people in business want to have the biggest successful business or whatever. And like you said, you don't have to do that. That is a choice. And it depends on the person or where you want to take it. And I think, like you said, some people might do that and then it might collapse, and then they're put off by doing it or burnt out or whatever, and then they don't do it again. Or, it's probably depends on the business and everything else. But like you said, it's, you can scale it however you probably want, depending on what it is, maybe. Your friend with the barbershop, he's got 2 barbershops now. He could possibly have 4 barbershops, but then, it depends on on what he wants to scale. And I suppose time as well. But But yeah, no, it's true what you said, and I love it. And it makes me think of when you was talking about that for some reason. Blockbuster came to my mind. Remember Blockbuster, where you can get DVDs or videos and stuff. And I saw an article actually, and they said that Blockbuster actually, was it they had the opportunity to buy out Netflix or something? I think Netflix offered them a deal, and they turned it down, and then they went bust. But then you think like if they would have taken that deal, the probably Blockbuster might be still around. So it's quite it's quite interesting how businesses work and what doesn't work out.
Yeah, and I mean, and if you think about it, Netflix used to send you DVDs in the mail. They completely changed that, and now they're getting ready to offer an ad-supported version of Netflix. So you can have the paid and the ad-free. So talk about a company and that's pretty agile, and a company that made a massive mistake too. They tried to do the video. Do you remember when they tried to do the on-demand video? It was going to be a separate website, and people went crazy. Sometimes those types of mistakes, at least for companies at that scale, create so much noise in the media that the mistake actually really helps them. I think Coca-Cola finally overtook Pepsi when they tried changing their formula for Coca-Cola, and then people went nuts, and it went in the media, and so sometimes those things help you. But yeah, I mean, clearly there was no vision at Blockbuster, but there's a lot of vision at Netflix.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting, isn't it? And you think like Netflix kind of I remember going on Netflix and there wasn't really much to watch, and I was kind of thinking, Christ. But now everyone is trying to be like Netflix. I even saw like recently Paramount Plus, and I was like, Paramount Plus, what is that? You've got Disney Plus now, and they're all trying to compete with Netflix really, and Netflix have to keep making really good documentaries or films that you go that way rather than the other way. I'm trying to think of another company.
There's a bunch of them now, Hulu and Disney Plus and all of them.
Yeah, because you mentioned like a company that made mistakes. So there was a company. Oh, that was it. Don't know if you play video games or not, but that Cyberpunk.
I've heard of it. I play games occasionally.
Yeah, it's because they made the game. The company who made the Witcher game.
Okay.
Made a futuristic first-person shooter game called Cyberpunk, and there's a lot of hype around it. A lot of hype. Keanu Reeves even featured in all the commercials and in the game to promote it. Then when it came out, it just tanked because it was unfinished and incomplete and had problems. And it's really, really damaged the reputation of that company. And I used to play other games for that company previous. And now I'm a bit like, I don't want to touch any games they make because that game was such a flop. And they had to refund thousands of customers. And they even had to do like a video apology. Like the director had to say sorry. And they even had threats. So you think like, if there's something like that happens, it's trying to restore that faith, isn't it, in the people? And video games are, it's a bit of a hard area, really, isn't it? Because if you make a bad game, the players might not buy the next game. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that's like an extreme situation. If you think about maybe these opportunities to quit, right? And that sounds like a doomsday scenario for a company, right? And sounds like the company may be done with, but there's always a path forward, right? If it's just a matter of trying to find that. So I think even if Cyberpunk or the company that makes those games there's still a path forward. They may have to dig themselves out of a hole. But if they're still passionate about it and they care about making games, and I'm sure there's a way forward. But that would be, I think, hopefully, most companies don't, I don't think most companies find themselves in that position.
Mm. Yeah.
So I don't think, those doomsday scenarios are necessarily high probabilities of happening to everybody who starts a business. But even if that did happen, there's still a path forward.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Because I saw actually before we came on the podcast, it says Cyberpunk player base has surged because Netflix have released a TV series called Cyberpunk Edge Runners, and it's like a anime kind of like series. So then, they're going to get more people playing the game now. So
That's it. You just do a Netflix doc fixes everything.
Yeah.
You can't find the killer. You make a Netflix doc.
Yeah.
I mean,
back to normal. But also, like, where can people find you on your website, social media, LinkedIn, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, MEND.com, and we're on, LinkedIn is probably the best place to look me up, Matt McBride on LinkedIn. And yeah, if MEND, we're on all of the social platforms, but I'm probably the most active on LinkedIn.
No, it's awesome. It's awesome. And I really appreciate your time, and I really appreciate, you reaching out to me and being on the show. I really wish you all the best with everything that you're doing. I think, you've got a great platform, and it's really helping other people with their needs, with booking appointments and much more. So, I wish you all the best and continue success in what you do. And, I look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, appreciate it. And likewise, Adam, I know you've got a great show and you're out there trying to put positivity out there for people. So, that's awesome, and happy to help, today and down the road.
Yeah, no, awesome. Well, thank you for everything. I really appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks,
Man.
Adam.
Cheers. Take care.